What's up, everybody? DJ Bucky here for Move the Sticks. Buck, it was great to be back with you the other day. A little two for podcast schedule this week. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I can't complain. You're right. It's good to be back in the saddle again, talking ball and those things. And hopefully we're getting closer to the NFL going to training camp and beginning to have a little football.
Yeah, I hope so, man. Fingers are crossed at all levels, high school level, the college level, and the professional level. My son is they've actually started doing some conditioning stuff. So they started this week, which they are very detailed in terms of they have kind of their groups of 5 guys. Everybody brings your own water bottle, your own bag with the stuff that you need. And then they kind of put them out in on the field, and they're just doing like stations,
Yeah.
So it's just and no ball, right? No football.
Yeah.
They're not lifting weights, so they're not touching weights. But man, it's a grind of conditioning of up downs and change of direction and box drills and all that stuff they're doing on the field. But I'll be honest with you. He's like, man, this is a lot of work. But I'm like, man, I'm just glad you're doing something. Like it's been so long just to be able to get out there and do something. We'll take it.
Yeah, no, it's funny because at the school where I coach at, we have been forced to kind of do everything via Zoom. So I think we're 9 weeks into a workout plan that we've done on Zoom, just body weight stuff, like body weight squats, vertical jumps, push-ups, all kinds of ab stuff or whatever. And then we ask the guys to kind of do the running on their own. We give them a running plan. So we do that 3 days a week. The other 3 days, they're running on their own, and then they get 1 day off. And so we'll see. But like what you described in terms of your son, it kind of reminds me of how we were introduced to the game in Little League. Like in Little League, you just did county fair and like those stations that you talk about. I just remember my coaches talking about, hey, get your ticket. We're going to the fair. What fair? What are you talking about? I don't see any Ferris wheels. No. Oh, this station, we got up downs. This next station, get your ticket. We're running over the bags. Oh, this is a sprint station. So I think we're having to do some of that because you just challenge, because I don't know how you can lift weights unless you're one of those schools or places where you have an outdoor weight room, where you have the ability to put your weights outside.
The prison yard weight room.
Yeah, like it's just one of those things where you kind of have to do it. So everyone is kind of improvising. And so we'll see, because it seems like things are a little further along down in San Diego. In LA County, it's not, everything has kind of been halted in terms of workouts or whatever. So we'll just kind of see what this looks like, because I don't know if anyone knows how this is going to play out.
Yeah, I mean, look, and we're just spitballing here, but doesn't it feel like high school football in California? I mean, spring is probably our best bet, I think.
It kind of seems like that. Like when you start factoring in the public schools, it just seems like a January start, like somewhere in the spring is going to be where your football starts. But I think it brings up an interesting thing, because like I know the hotbed of Southern California football. There are a lot of 4- and 5-star players that will have to make a decision because they were planning to be early enrollees. Yeah. So what does that mean? Do they just opt out of their final season of high school, go right to college?
I hope not, man.
I mean, but you wonder, because you have some of these guys who had kind of set up everything to be able to graduate in December so they can go join their colleges. And I just wonder
can we rail on that for a minute though, Buck? And you're a high school coach, so you have a unique perspective here. But that to me, and David Shaw is great to talk about this. He doesn't allow guys to come early. Look, you're a high schooler for once in your life. Go to prom, get a graduation. Like, don't miss out on those experiences. Everybody's in a hurry to kind of get to the next thing. And I think I agree with him on that. And if kids are going to miss their senior year of high school football, I mean, I still have tons of memories from my senior year of high school football. Friends that you keep up with to this day, those moments you share together. Kids, it's the last time you're going to get the chance to play with kids that you went to kindergarten with. You kind of all grew up together. But even that's getting lost in this whole transfer culture, where positioning yourself to get to this school so you can get seen by this coach. And it's so driven by, getting to college. And I used to say, okay, I understand it for the kid that maybe doesn't have any offers. Maybe you're at a smaller school, you have no offers, and you feel like you just, hey, I can't afford college. I need to go someplace where I can get seen, where I can potentially get one. That's not what any of this is. All these kids are 4- and 5-star recruits, and they're still maneuvering around to different programs. Like, please explain that to me.
Well, I can't explain it, DJ. I can't explain it. I'm at a public school now, and I kind of understand the challenges of the landscape where, look, man, we can't offer what some of the private schools can offer. Like, we can't give you some of the top-notch facilities. We can't necessarily guarantee you that you're going to play against and with some of the best competition or whatever. What we can provide you is with an experience. However, there are people who are treating the high school game like it's business. It is the
It's a feeder
launch
system.
pad. Yeah, it's the launch pad to my NFL career before I get to college. So I need to go to a big time high school. I need to be seen. I need to be around a bunch of 4 and 5 star players. And then I'm going to go to a college. I'm going to go early. I'm going to plan to be there 3.5 years. And then I'm moving on to the National Football League. And for like a small, very small minority of players, that could be a proper blueprint. But the overwhelming majority of guys aren't going to play in the National Football League. Most of them won't get an opportunity to play major college football. And so the high school experience should be what that is, and like a real pure and fun experience where, look, you develop those traits and characteristics that help you beyond the game. You know, that help you become a good person in the community. That helps you become a good person at home. Helps you become a leader in your house and out in the community. And if you are fortunate enough to go to college and do all those other things, look, man, it's another opportunity to have 4 or 5 years of life lessons that help shape you as a young person. But you know, everything is fast forward. And I feel bad because we talked about the specialization and all those other things. I just feel bad for the kids that don't have the opportunity to kind of dip their toe in a bunch of different waters. Like, oh, football season, basketball season, baseball, or track. Hey, let me try and do all these things. Because when you get to college, you don't get a chance to do all of that. Like, it is a very singular and narrow focus when it comes to it. So it's unfortunate, but like, man, it's hard for me to say that it's going to ever go back to how it was yesteryear.
You played at the ultimate level, Buck. You played National Football League. Now, I played in college, but I can just compare the college experience to the high school experience. You can have the history to be able to compare all three. But I've played in big college games. I've played in 80,000 people and all that kind of stuff. I've never had more fun than with my friends that I grew up with, that I've known literally since I could pee. Learned how to pee in a toilet. Those have been my friends for 12 years.
Yeah.
Like, we grew up together. And when we would play our rival school, like we went to Christian high school, we played Marian Catholic. That's our rival. And to play in those games with your friends against guys you've been playing against since, middle school, like, those are memories that these guys are all just foregoing all that stuff. And I don't even think it's necessary, man. Like, you already got it. You've already got your scholarship offers. You already know you're going to go on and play in college. It's going to be an adjustment. You'll make the adjustment. If you have to redshirt, it's not the end of the world. But they're missing out on so many of these good memories and experiences. I don't know. I don't like it, man.
No, it's a different time. DJ, I can tell you this, and it's funny. Just a peek into how I used to think at high school. I went to Millbrook High School in Raleigh, North Carolina. And the big deal for me was just to see my name in the paper, right? Like, you had to, I remember in basketball, you had to score 10 points to get your full name in the box score. If you didn't score 10 points, you would only get like your last name. So I remember in basketball that being big. I remember in football, like, obviously you wanted to get a picture in the paper, you want to score touchdowns, you want to kind of get a headline and those things. And I remember the big goal, because I used to write all my goals down on like this little folder that I would get from this wide receiver camp. And one of my goals was like, hey, I want to be in the News and Observer all region team, all East. That was the big deal. You didn't think about all American. I mean, maybe you thought about all state, but the big thing was I wanted to be all conference. And if I could be all region, that was like a big deal. And so to come from that to now, the internet has opened up the world and everyone wants to be like a Army All-American. You want to play in the Under Armour game, or you want to do all these other things or whatever. And I get it. Like, you should have lofty dreams and ambitions, but I think we lose out on some of the essence of what high school football is. High school football is an opportunity to, as you say, play with your buddies, represent your neighborhood, make lasting memories with the rival game. At Millbrook, our rival was Garner High School. Anthony Barber was a big-time player there. They won the state title. And I remember those games. I vividly remember those games. And I still say this. There's nothing like Friday Night Lights.
Nope.
There's nothing like going to school with your jersey on that day, having a pregame meal, walking out in pregame stretch, like all of those other things. And then playing the game Friday night. And then if it was homecoming or whatever, the dance afterwards, man, there's nothing that can top those things. And like, look, I'm friends with a bunch of my guys from high school on Facebook and those things, and you see them, and some of their kids now go to the high school and they still have the same traditions. And so it's tough because we kind of lost some of that sense of community in high school.
Yeah. Anyways, we weren't even planning on talking about that. I was thinking about my son working out, and then the whole culture of everything. I'm okay if they want to do the game. If they want to do high school football in the spring, I mean, they could do it in March, April, May. I mean, at the very push it all the way back. Obviously, you'd have issues with baseball, and have all those sports kind of going on at once, and you wouldn't be able to play all those different sports. But if that gets cheerleaders and fans in the stands, and it makes it like a real high school experience, fine by me, man. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm good with it too. Like I just want the young people to be able to have like that stuff, because I feel crushed for all the guys who didn't have an opportunity to finish their spring seasons. Didn't have a prom, didn't have a real graduation. Everything was virtual. I would like them to have that experience. For the overwhelming majority of them, that's the last time they're going to play competitive sports and be around people, to be kind of the center of attention and those things before they go about living a civilian lifestyle. So I would just like them to have the opportunity, even if it's an abbreviated season. I just want them to have an opportunity to kind of enjoy it for one last time.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm with you. All right, this is what we're doing today, and I'll give you kind of the origin of why we arrived at this topic. I was doing a radio interview the other day, and I got asked about. I was in Utah, and they asked me about what I think about where their guys landed. I know Utah had a ton of guys drafted in this last year. What do you think about the fits? And I started thinking about. I'm racking my brain. I'm going, okay, man, the draft was in April. That's been a minute. I've started watching guys for this next year's draft class, and then I could not remember in my mind like who went where in the draft. And so I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, we've had no OTAs, we've had no rookie camp. Like out of all this off season, out of the spring, we would always hear about this guy was popping, or this guy looks like he could start. Man, he's going to nudge out this veteran. He's maybe this guy struggled a little bit. You remember like Lamar Jackson? They were saying, oh, he couldn't throw a spiral and was struggling early. There's all these storylines that every year emerge out of the spring. We don't have any of those this year. So these rookies have kind of been out of sight, out of mind. And I was thinking almost like if you were taking a course and you'd say, okay, this is going to be a review week. Like we're just going to go back and review and go over what we did earlier in the semester. I thought it'd be kind of fun just to kind of review the first round of the draft and try and remind ourselves where all these guys went.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea because I think we have kind of lost sight of where guys going, because you and I have already talked about next year's class and the group of guys that are potentially coming into the league in the 2021 draft. And so we have kind of forgotten about the 2020 draft class, where these guys are going, what to expect of them, even in the pandemic and the non-existent off season when it comes to their on the field work. Yeah, so I think it is a good time to kind of take a look at some of the guys that were drafted in the first round and just kind of talk about what we liked about them when they were coming out and how we see them fitting.
Yeah, let's roll through it here, man. And we'll just kind of go. We don't need to spend a lot of time on each one, but just kind of, again, just a reminder of where all these guys went and what to expect from them. So we start there at the top. Joe Burrow to the Cincinnati Bengals, Buck. With no offseason, I still think he's the week one starter. Do you?
Yeah, no, I think he's the week one starter. And I actually think he is going to be set up to have success. When you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, I know people like to kind of really dump on them and talk about how they don't have much going on. But when I look at this offense, I think Joe Burrow should be successful from day one. Joe Mixon is a guy that had over 1,000 yards rushing, one of the top running backs in the league. If A.J. Green is healthy, you now have a tandem with him and Tyler Boyd that can create problems. The offensive line is a bit of a question mark, but they get Jonah Williams back. If Jonah Williams plays at a high level, like that gives them a decent offensive line. And if Zach Taylor is really committed to doing what he said he wanted to do with Joe Burrow, which is meet him halfway, kind of take some of those concepts from LSU and let him kind of spread it out and play the game that he's always played as a pass first point guard, there's no reason why Joe Burrow can't hit the ground running as a rookie starter.
Yeah, spread and shred, right? That's what you said a while ago, and I've adopted it. I think that's what you'll see there. Get him comfortable, get everybody out in the route and go. All right, Washington Redskins, Chase Young. They got I think we both had him as the top player in the draft. When you look at that defensive front, we've talked a lot about the 5 first rounders, a similarity there with the 49ers. When you look at their defensive line, would you say it's the best defensive line in the division when you look at that group?
I mean, I think they're right there with Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia has more experience with Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham and those guys. But
bringing over Javon Hargrave too.
Javon Hargrave, like there, but look, they're pushing in terms of just raw talent. They have a ton of talent. 5 first-rounders amongst that defensive line rotation. They have Montez Sweat, Deron Payne. You think about Jonathan Allen and Ryan Kerrigan. But Chase Young is the final piece. He's kind of like the cherry on top of the sundae. When you hear Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio made the comparisons to Julius Peppers and Von Miller, well, when you look at the impact that those guys had, a couple years after those guys joined the squad, they went to the Super Bowl. Now, the Washington Redskins have a lot of stuff to do to make that dream become a reality, but Chase Young is a dominant player, and you put him on that line where he may get more one-on-ones, there's no reason why he shouldn't have double-digit sacks really, really early in his career.
Yeah, I think I would still probably lean towards Philadelphia, like you said, the experience there. But that defensive front is going to have to carry the Washington Redskins. All right, the Detroit Lions took Okudah. Remember the debate at the draft was Okudah versus Derek Brown. There was a lot of buzz that maybe they would take Derek Brown. They ended up going Okudah. And I remember at the time we discussed the kind of philosophical side of things with Patricia coming under Belichick, which is he builds actually, outside in versus inside out, and working on the secondary and putting your resources there versus the front.
Yeah, no, when you look at it, and obviously, look, it's not a coincidence that Matt Patricia was in New England for a long time. He has left, but he has seen Stephon Gilmore emerge and evolve into the Defensive Player of the Year. He has seen how with Stephon Gilmore, they've been able to kind of lock him up on a person and maybe double team on the other side or just play man-to-man all over the field. The Detroit Lions are a team that lives in man-to-man coverage. Jeffrey Okudah is a guy that can play man as well as anybody, but he can do it in a variety of different ways. The thing about it with Okudah, I think the comparison to Gilmore is apt because I don't know if Stephon Gilmore is what I call a A-plus athlete, meaning he's going to check off all of these high-level boxes as an elite athlete when it comes to speed, explosiveness, leaping ability. And I don't think Jeffrey Okudah is that. But what both guys are, they're very detailed and thorough technicians. When you watch them, it is like watching clinic tape. They're tough, they're tackled, they do those things. That is always going to give Okudah a chance to be a high-level player. I liked him a lot. It's tough because I don't know if they have enough pass rush for him to hold up on that island all by himself in that division, but I think they got a good one. We'll just see how Matt Patricia is able to kind of integrate him into the lineup and kind of put him in a position to succeed.
All right, Andrew Thomas to the New York Giants. I'd not have him as the top tackle, but he's the one who had the most experience, playing at a solid level in the SEC for 3 years. I think he's kind of a steady Eddie. I didn't think he's I don't view him as a big time, he's going to emerge as a top 5 talent in the NFL. Maybe he will, but I didn't have him there. But I thought from a floor standpoint, a very high floor kind of fit the Dave Gettleman profile there with the Giants.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, he's kind of a brand name, right? He's a brand name because he played at a big school in the SEC, had very, very solid tape. Like, wasn't necessarily like outstanding, but it was solid. You know exactly what you're getting. And I think for the Giants and Dave Gettleman and where they are in their rebuilding process, they just want to make sure that, as we've talked about it, like, look, man, if you can get on base, if you can hit doubles, you can win a lot of games. And so I think right now they were playing for the double. They could have swung for the fences and maybe taken a better and more explosive athlete in a Mekhi Becton or even looked at Jedrick Wills. But for them, I think they wanted safe. They opted for safe and taking Thompson. That's why he goes in the top 5, even though many of us didn't expect him to be a top 5 pick.
Well, interesting thing, I never even thought about this until right now. When you look at last year, when they took DeAndre Baker out of Georgia, and DeAndre Baker struggled, and then DeAndre Baker, the immaturity issues that you heard about, that kind of cropped up a little bit here in the offseason. I wonder what kind of relationship Andrew Thomas has with him going back to their days at Georgia, and if maybe he could be a good influence on him, because by all accounts, Andrew Thomas, the character and everything was solid.
Yeah, no, his character is outstanding. He's solid. I mean, you're talking about someone, they talk about playing in the band and having a love of musical instruments and all that other stuff, a very mature kid. I think the thing with DeAndre Baker, and you wonder because, like, it kind of goes against it because I didn't view DeAndre Baker as a safe pick a season ago. Like, I was slow to warm up to him if I ever warmed up to him as a player. I think that also played a part in the process. Like, they kind of maybe swung for the fences a little bit with DeAndre Baker, thinking that he would be something that
was their third first rounder.
Yeah. So they took a bit of a chance. I think in the top 5, they wanted to make sure that they got it right, that they didn't mess up. And I think that's why David Gettleman kind of leaned towards Andrew Thomas in this process.
All right, we get to 5 and 6. We get the quarterbacks. Tua Tagovailoa to the Dolphins. The Chargers follow that up with Justin Herbert.
Look, man, the Tua pick is interesting because of everything that we heard about with the injury history, right? Is he healthy? Can he do it? He had the kind of workout, the simulated workout where we saw him move around a little bit. We saw him throw the ball. And I think people fall in love with, I think the Dolphins fell in love with the personality. I still believe this. When he's healthy and right, to me, he's a left-handed version of Drew Brees in terms of the way the ball comes out, the way he's able to kind of play the game in a connected dots fashion. I think the bigger thing will be, can he become a durable player, a player that can line up each and every week, play 16 games. You were down there with the Chargers, man. Phillip Rivers, 200 plus starts. Eli Manning being able to suit up 200 plus times. Like the A-level quarterbacks show up each and every week. They take the ball. And so can Tua be a guy that shows that he can be a durable, dependable, and high-level player for the Miami Dolphins? That is the biggest question mark that we'll have for him, because I think the talent is there. It's just the durability.
Yeah, and I get to Justin Herbert here with the Chargers. I would anticipate we're going to see Tyrod Taylor unless Justin Herbert just blows everybody away in camp, which is going to be challenging with the limited offseason. I think they have an acceptable option there with Taylor, so I anticipate Herbert, we see him maybe in the back half of the season. But I do think it's a good fit with this scheme. It's going to be a different looking offense for the Chargers. It's going to resemble a lot more of that Shanahan scheme that Anthony Lynn played in. Shane Steichen will be calling the plays, but you'll see a lot more quarterback movement. And I do think, if Justin Herbert could kind of cherry pick a place to go, I think this will be someplace he can be comfortable and have a chance to succeed. But I do think you got to be a little patient there.
Yeah, I think you have to be patient, but I also think this system, if done correctly, if done in the way that Shanahan and even Sean McVay have been able to do it, it elevates the play of the quarterback. And so for Justin Herbert, I think this is the perfect marriage, because I think they will create an offense that has a lot of play action passes, some movement-based passes that put him on the move. He was kind of underutilized in that aspect at Oregon. I think he can be what we call a highly efficient game manager. I don't know if he'll be the takeover type, meaning like a Pat Mahomes type, but I do believe he can do what the guy that played against Pat Mahomes did, Jimmy Garoppolo. High level of efficiency in terms of getting the ball to the playmakers and being able to win a ton of games. Justin Herbert, to me, has that kind of ceiling. He's not what I would call maybe like a 5-star player, but I certainly think he's a 4-star player that can certainly get them to the winner's circle.
Yeah, since we have baseball in the brain with baseball coming back here, I kind of think the Chargers offense is going to be more of their winning formula is going to be more of we're not going to make errors. We're going to throw strikes. We're going to take bases. We're going to take the extra base. If we have to move a guy over, we're going to move him over, and we're going to kind of grind out games. Whereas the Kansas City Chiefs are going to play for the 3-run homer, they're going to try and that's it. Big boy ball that way.
Yeah, like I think the Chargers are like the old school Atlanta Braves. Like they are Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz, and they're going to throw strikes. They're going to minimize.
Keep you in every game.
Keep you in every game. And like there's an old saying where more games are lost than won, meaning that more teams give it away by being aggressive and turning over the ball. And I think what you're going to see from the Chargers is, hey, we're going to make you beat us by not giving you easy opportunities, not turning the ball over, not being super
no
risky.
Short fields.
Yeah, like we're going to play it the right way. And so I think with Justin Herbert, I think he is certainly capable of being able to play that style, because that's the style that he played at Oregon.
All right, a couple defenders here at 7 and 8, and this was the decision for the Carolina Panthers. We thought they might go Isaiah Simmons. They ended up going Derek Brown, the defensive tackle out of Auburn. Isaiah Simmons then turns around, goes to the Arizona Cardinals with the 8th pick.
Derek Brown was the most disruptive player that I saw on tape. Inside, he terrorized people. And the way the game is going, you have to have 2 pass rushers, one inside, one outside. I know people will talk about Derek Brown's lack of sack production, but his disruption showed up on tape. He is a very disruptive defender, plays hard. You don't see guys that are 300-plus pounds that run all over the field like he runs with a nonstop motor. I think he's going to be a good one. And I understand why Matt Rule opted for that. When you're trying to integrate and build up your culture, you want people that embody what you talk about when you stand in front of the meeting. Matt Rule has talked on our show about, I want hardworking, tough, and competitive. Well, when you look at Derek Brown, check, check, check. He does all those things.
Yeah, and I look at him lining up next to Brian Burns, who had a good rookie year. And I always go back to, one of the dominant defenses that I don't think people reference a lot. That San Francisco 49er team that lost in the Super Bowl, but
Mhm.
that team for those 4 or 5 years with Harbaugh, those early years when they
Yeah.
had Justin Smith and Alden Smith lined up next to each other, they terrorized people. And I think when you can find that combination of a dominant defensive tackle, put him next to an edge rusher, that's going to give people problems. And I like that young nucleus they have there. Line those guys up next to each other and pick your poison on the offensive line.
Yeah, if they're athletic enough to run those games, because you talk about that San Francisco 49er crew, Justin Smith and Alden Smith gave people problems because they run
Yep.
those simple TE stunts. Justin Smith would come up the field, Alden Smith would come up under. He did a great job of really creating opportunities for Alden Smith to rack up a ton of sacks. And if you go back, Alden Smith, those first 3 years, I mean, you talk about like a number of
Big
sacks,
numbers.
like
Yeah.
big sack numbers. And a lot of that had to do with his ability, but also Justin Smith's ability to set him up. Derrick Brown will set him up. In terms of setup, I think the Arizona Cardinals have to be careful with how they deploy Isaiah Simmons so they can set him up for success. He is a very talented player. He can play in the back end. He can play near the line of scrimmage. How does Van Joseph use him? Because you have so many skills, so many tools in the toolbox. You got to make sure you give him the opportunity to use the right tool in the right situation. I think that is the biggest challenge because there's no doubt about his talent, but the deployment. How do they deploy him? How would they utilize him?
Well, I think if you look at kind of the guy you have to worry about when you play Seattle is Russell Wilson. So
Mm-hmm.
in those two games, you're going to use him to mirror him and try and spy Russell Wilson and be able to chase him down in space. When you play the 49ers, you got to deal with George Kittle. That's who you got to stop. So in those two games, I think you'll see him matched up a bunch and he'll get a chance to cover George Kittle. The Rams in the past, it would have been Todd Gurley. He's not there anymore. We'll see what this, kind of new version of the Rams offense looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But they run a lot of outside zone. So just having that range and that sideline to sideline speed will benefit him there. So I do think it's a delicate balance in terms of not giving him too much. But I do think inside that division, you can customize, the playlist, so to speak, for him.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the way that you have to do. I think this year, unlike any other year, I think simple is better. I think the ability to simplify and really create opportunities for your young players has to be at the forefront. It has to be the priority. You got to make it where those guys can play fast and they can make an impact.
Yeah, that's going to be, kind of the plan for him in this upcoming season. All right, let's get to the rest of the top 10 here, which two guys, C.J. Henderson to Jacksonville, the corner, and then Jedrick Wills, the tackle, the second tackle off the board to the Cleveland Browns.
C.J. Henderson to me is interesting because some would say that he was a late riser of the process. There was legitimate conversation about whether it's C.J. Henderson and Jeff Okudah in several meeting rooms. When I look at C.J. Henderson, the thing about him, very natural in his ability, smooth and fluid athlete, his ability to transition and kind of play a variety of techniques, whether press or off, all those things I like. I liked his physicality very early in the year when it came to playing bump coverage. The thing that everyone is going to talk about, is he going to up the ante when it comes to his physicality when tackling on the perimeter?
Yeah.
One thing that has to happen now in the National Football League, your corners have to be sure and willing tacklers. And so we have to see if C.J. Henderson is going to embrace that part of the job description. Can he come up and thump when they ask him to thump in the run game?
Yeah, and I think when you look at that division, and that's a division where you got some teams that want to run the football. You look at the Indianapolis Colts with their offensive line. You look at the Tennessee Titans, obviously, with what they've done. So you're going to challenge those corners to tackle. So he's got to do better in that department. But the physical skills are outstanding. I do think there's a little bit of assembly required. I don't think he's one of those guys we say come in clear packaging where you know exactly what you're getting. I do think there's some development to take place there. But the foundation of what you have to work with is outstanding. So he's got to coach him up and get it out of him. Then the Cleveland Browns with Willis, with Jedrick Wills, it's going to be interesting with them when you have two new tackles, right, with him and Jack Conklin. So getting those guys comfortable, getting them in a new system with a new coaching staff, and Wills trying to make that jump up to the next level. I believe in his ability, but I would caution that there could be some rough moments just because of all the change and the newness here without the offseason and the spot that he's in a division where you see some dudes now. So that to me is going to be one where I would just caution Browns fans, don't freak out if he gives up a couple sacks early in the season. I think you'll see him get better.
Yeah, I think you will see him get better. And I think the big thing for him and his improvement will be how much the Browns elect to use 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 1 back, 2 tight end on the field, 2 wide receivers. Because if they use 2 tight ends on the field, they can really provide them with some kind of help with either chip, body help. They can kind of change the approach and kind of help him out. Without the offseason, you're right. Going from right tackle to left tackle could be a transition. But, man, I just think he's so natural at what he does. I think he will figure it out. I do believe early in the season it's very important that they protect him. So I think you will see a lot. One, you can see a lot of play action pass from Kevin Stefanski anyway. But 2, I think you need to see a lot of that play action passing game early to kind of nullify some of the pass rush from the opposition by making them slow down and respect the running game.
All right, let's go every other one now. So I'll give you one, then I'll follow up, and we'll just ping pong, and we'll pick up the pace here as we're outside the top 10. I'll give you the floor first. Mekhi Becton to the Jets.
Look, man, big body. Sam Darnold needed a protector. They think they also needed some nastiness and a tempo setter on that offensive line. I am surprised that he landed outside the top 10, but the New York Jets got a good one in my estimation when they got Mekhi Becton.
Yeah, the Las Vegas Raiders at 12, they take Henry Ruggs, the first receiver off the board. We talked about that being a possibility. It was not just a race between CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy, and sure enough, Ruggs leapfrogged both of them. I look at this pick with the Raiders, and I go back to the big benefactor being his former college teammate in the run game there, and Josh Jacobs. He's going to be able to run safeties out of there. You've got Waller, the tight end, who runs 4-4. You've got 2 guys inside and outside, one inside, one outside. They're going to be able to run coverage off. It's going to create more room for Josh Jacobs. So if you do the fantasy football thing, get Josh Jacobs early.
Yeah, I think you have to get Josh Jacobs early. I just want to see if Derek Carr can mesh with that because he's more of a dink and dunk pass. He doesn't really push the ball down the field. We'll see if they can get maximum value from Henry Ruggs. At 13, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tristan Wirfs. I was a big Tristan Wirfs fan. I like his combination of size, strength, and athleticism. I like his technical savvy. The fact that he is really a high-level athlete. Like, this is a guy that was dominant in high school, not only as a wrestler, but as a shot and disc thrower, state championship level. I think you see those traits when he plays. And I think for Tom Brady to play well, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have to protect him. I would like to see them upgrade their running game. They don't necessarily have the running back to do that. So Tristan Wirfs is going to have to be on his game as a pass protector.
I love the wrestling background with offensive linemen as well. All right, 14, the Niners. This is the pick. Remember, they trade DeForest Buckner to the Colts. They get this pick. They end up replacing DeForest Buckner with Javon Kinlaw from South Carolina. What I say about Kinlaw, Buck, before he shut it down at the Senior Bowl, I mean, that was kind of the exclamation point on him as a prospect. They couldn't really block him down there in Mobile.
No, long, lean, athletic, physical. The strength and power kind of pops. And look, man, I think he's a guy that is highly motivated. And I think that inspiration and motivation displays shows when he's on the field. 15, the Denver Broncos took Jerry Jeudy to pair up with eventually KJ Hamler to give Drew Lock some weapons on the outside. And DJ, I know you went dark on social media for a while, but Jerry Jeudy has been posting these videos where he is working out. Man, whatever you thought about him as a route runner, add a plus to it. His ability to use hesitation, stop and start, suddenness, and quickness is outstanding. I think he's going to be a terrific player. And if they move him to the slot, he's going to be a problem for people because with Cortland Sutton on the outside and maybe KJ Hamler playing on the outside on the other side as a speed threat, Jerry Jeudy working the middle of the field could be a handful for nickel defenders and linebackers.
Yeah, easy completions there for Drew Lock. He's going to give him a lot of easy completions. All right, the Atlanta Falcons, A.J. Terrell. Thought there was a chance they could end up trading up for C.J. Henderson. They didn't. They stand pat. But they end up getting a big, tall, long, athletic corner in A.J. Terrell a little bit earlier than I had him graded. But I had him as a first-round player. He was in that mix. So it wasn't a huge reach. And I think when you look inside that division, specifically when you look at what you have to deal with Tampa, and then you also look at what you have to deal with Mike Thomas in New Orleans, having a big corner is not just a nice thing; it's a necessity, and I think that fits the bill there for the Falcons.
Yeah, it does fit the bill. Like you have to build your team to win your division. All of those big time wide receivers demand extra attention, and you have to have guys that can not only play man to man, but they got to be able to be physical enough to hold up against those big bodies that dominate within that division. At 17, the Dallas Cowboys take CeeDee Lamb. DJ and I, we always talk theoretically about, hey, take the best player available, and that's what the Dallas Cowboys did. They didn't stretch and reach for a position of need. They went and got the best player. And I think CeeDee Lamb and Dallas gives them an opportunity to really take that offense and take an offense that was already really, really good, take it to another level, because now they're 11 personnel package with CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. I know Blake Jarwin is just kind of like an unknown commodity at tight end, but wow, that's a lot of weaponry. I think you can say they have the best and most explosive offense in that division, and that's going to give them a chance to maybe win the division because they can really play offensive football and they can put points on the board.
I think they have a Super Bowl caliber team. I really do. And I love CeeDee Lamb. I love the fit there. I think he's going to be outstanding. I like the fact that he doesn't have any concerns about rocking the 88. You want to throw the 88 on in Dallas, you got some confidence.
Yeah.
And I do like that. All right. Next, we talked about this for a long time. Austin Jackson going to the Miami Dolphins. The question was, would they take him with this pick or would they wait for their third first rounder? They had to upgrade that offensive line. They take Tua. They needed some help there, and the tackles just went flying off the board as we would expect. Austin Jackson had ups and downs at USC last year. A.J. Epinesa got the best of him in the bowl game, but very athletic. He's young. He's 20 years old. Did the whole thing with donating the bone marrow to his sister, so he missed the offseason coming into his last year at USC. You're betting on the future there. He was not picked 18th based off what he put on tape at USC. He was picked 18th based on what you hope he can become.
Yeah, DJ, and I think it's important to know, you mentioned the bone marrow surgery. He said that really impacted the way that he played into the season. And so he never fully felt right until about midway in the season when he said he was fully recovered, because he had that surgery late in July. And so, look, I think we're going to see a better version of Austin Jackson than we saw at SC during his final season. There is no doubt, athletically, he has all the traits that you look for in a high-end left tackle.
All right, who you got next here, Buck?
All right, so look, we can go to 19. The Las Vegas Raiders took Damon Arnett, and that was a bit of a surprise. And it was a bit of a surprise because I don't think many people had him graded this high. Now, I like Arnett. I saw him kind of as a fringe first rounder, more like a second round player. But here's what I like about him. I think he's pretty solid in how he plays. From a technique standpoint, I think he has those things. I think he's tough. He'll tackle on the perimeter. He does a great job when he's kind of locked up in man-to-man. Does a really good job. Ideally, in my mind, he's an ideal number 2 corner. I don't know if he's number 1, but look, sometimes in the draft, you take a guy that has to be the backside corner. I think he's a backside corner, and if it put in the right role, I think he succeed. But if you're expecting him to be Nnamdi Asomugha, like the Raiders have those number 1 corners in the past, I don't think he's a Nnamdi type, but I do think he's a very, very solid player.
Yeah, a little bit earlier than a lot of people had him, but they liked him. They like his toughness a lot, so he fits in kind of with what they're trying to build there with the Raiders. 20 Jags come back with their second pick. They go back to the SEC. They take K'Lavon Chaisson, who is a phenomenal athlete. I know, Bucky, you were a little bit slow to warm up to him just because of lack of production. But I think what you look at with them, this was kind of an upside pick. Again, used a baseball analogy. I feel like they kind of drafted the high school players. When you look at C.J. Henderson and K'Lavon Chaisson, all the ability in the world, need a little bit of development. You're betting on the come, betting on the upside. Maybe a little bit lower floor, but really high ceiling with the Jags 2 picks.
Yeah, no. So I think here's what I like about the pick. I think it's important to not look at picks in a vacuum, just pick and team. I like what they put around him, because now what you're doing is you're putting K'Lavon Chaisson opposite of Josh Allen. And I don't know how many people realize that Josh Allen had 10 sacks for the Jacksonville Jaguars last year as a rookie, and he was just kind of figuring it out. Well, now they removed some of the players in that locker room, Marcel Darius, Calais Campbell.
They still have Ngakoue too, Buck.
Yeah, Ngakoue. They are entrusting Josh Allen to be the leader of that unit up front. And then you talk about Yannick Ngakoue. So now you're talking about K'Lavon Chaisson potentially being either a rotational player or a backside complementary rusher. I like him in that role more so than, hey, you're our guy. You're going to be the number 1 pass rusher. We're depending on you to be able to get double-digit sacks to really set the table for the rest of the defense.
All right, how about the Eagles 21?
Look, this is a tough one because this one has been debated in all companies. Jalen Reagor. The Philadelphia Eagles had to make a decision between Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson. And I just firmly believe that this came down to they wanted someone that could be a stretch to field guy. So they went with Jalen Reagor. The trick will be, can Reagor be consistent enough as a pass catcher to give them what they want in that position? The biggest thing that the biggest issue we had with the Eagles, one was the lack of speed, but two, the lack of consistency when it comes to catching the ball. Can he be a more consistent threat? Because the big play potential is there. He has to consistently catch the ball, though.
Yeah, I mean, that was the decision, really outside guy versus an inside guy. And they felt comfortable where they were on the inside, so they went and got somebody on the outside that can really stretch the field. You get to Minnesota, they ended up taking Justin Jefferson right after that. Remember how fast they turned the card in when he was there? They did not mess around to get that one in. And I've gone on record, the wide receiver from LSU, we have a mutual friend that was around him that's been around a lot of great receivers, and he gave him high praise. I'm on record as saying I think his production and I said this thinking we would have an off season at the time, which we did not have. But I believe his production will eclipse Stephon Diggs, who left and went to the Buffalo Bills. I really think Justin Jefferson is kind of made to play with a guy like Kirk Cousins. When you look at the success that Kirk had in Washington and the comfort level he had there, I think you're going to see the same type of a thing. We saw him take a step forward last year with Minnesota. And I just look at the guys that he's traditionally had success with. To me, Justin Jefferson matches up.
Yeah, man. Like typically, Kirk Cousins has outstanding success with guys that are route runners. And the under-reported aspect of Kirk Cousins this year is he gets Gary Kubiak. So now he really gets to sit at the knee of the guy who is the master of this offense, the Shanahan system. Yes, Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan deserve credit, but Gary Kubiak took that offense to another level when he was at Houston. And when you look at wherever he's been, the quarterback has played well, and they've had they found a way to get wide receivers to play at a high level. Justin Jefferson being an outstanding route runner, I think it's very possible that you could see him and Adam Thielen both go over the 1,000-yard mark. I believe Justin Jefferson is that good, and I'm a big believer in this offense with Gary Kubiak calling the plays.
All right, 23, the Chargers come back in. They make a trade to get back into the first round.
Yeah, look, Kenneth Murray gives them something that they needed. You talk about being strong right down the middle. You have Derwin James there, who's the hybrid, but they still needed a second-level defender that can make plays. Well, that's Kenneth Murray. Kenneth Murray is the epitome of a sideline-to-sideline chaser. He can come down and blitz. He doesn't mind striking in the hole. He also has enough athleticism to cover backs out the backfield. I like him, and I like what they're doing because they're building this defense to match up with the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you can imagine, he may have to match up with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I like that opportunity. I like that matchup, and I think the Chargers had to do that with defending the Chiefs in mind.
Yeah, also an outstanding blitzer. So when you get in pass rush situations, you're going to be able to have guys with Bosa, Ingram, Chenna Nwosu, who's very versatile, can walk around and move around, and Kenneth Murray. Those are a lot of chess pieces for Gus Bradley to kind of move around and can get kind of exotic. I know that hasn't really been his way of doing things, but he's going to have some creativity and some flexibility now with Kenneth Murray added to that mix. Cesar Ruiz, steady Eddie center from the University of Michigan. He goes to the Saints at 24. The Saints, and I think you'll see this continue after Drew Brees' career is over, but just philosophically believe in protecting the interior first. They hit on Ryan Ramczyk as a tackle, and they obviously have Terron Armstead, but they've always invested in the interior of that offensive line, be it the draft or in free agency, and that continues here with just a really steady Eddie, solid player in Cesar Ruiz.
Yeah, steady Eddie player, and the reason you want to be solid on the inside, guys like Drew Brees, they hate having pressure right in their face. And most traditional pocket passers that don't have the movement skills, they don't like people that are right up there. So that's why you got to build a fortress right in front of them. And we can forecast it if it's Taysom Hill or really if it's Jameis Winston. They're building the fortress up front to make sure that their traditional drop back passers can have success. Brandon Ayuk was the next one. Brandon Ayuk is an interesting one because he really reminds me a lot of Deebo Samuel in terms of the way that he is able to kind of make plays on the move. Terrific with the ball in his hands. His ability to make things happen gives them a dynamic playmaker to really build around. And as we think about Kyle Shanahan in this offense, man, I just think he goes to the next level with another playmaker like Ayuk.
Yep. I love what he does after the catch. That was his best trait. All right. Things got interesting at 26. Again, some people were blindsided by this. I wasn't. We talked about this all the time, Buck, on our show. We talked about it on Path to the Draft, but Jordan Love, Green Bay Packers, they make a move to try and get the heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers, maybe a year or two early as opposed to a year or two late. And again, I know there's been a lot of people that were upset about this. I think Aaron Rodgers has kind of come around to understanding it. Maybe it wasn't communicated as well as it should have been. I don't have a problem with this pick. I have a problem with with not using some of these follow-up picks to put more weapons around Aaron Rodgers. That was my only critique of the Packers draft.
Yeah, and talking to people there, they were saying, like, look, man, they had wide receiver on the radar, but unfortunately, in every round when they were about to get their guy came off the board. Some would speculate that maybe Brandon Ayuk was going to be their guy in the first round. He's off the board. Jordan Love is sitting there. They take him. This is a pick that is for the future. You know, we talk about the quarterback position being the most important position. Well, you need to invest in that. You need to invest in it before you're due. And I think this gives them an opportunity to really develop Jordan Love to prepare him for a starting role down the line.
All right, who we have next?
Look, Jordan Brooks. And you talk about surprises, Jordan Brooks going to the Seattle Seahawks out of Texas Tech. Not a lot of people talked about him leading up to the draft. But when you see him on tape, very productive, a guy that is a high motor guy, very instinctive. And we've talked about what Pete Carroll likes. He loves guys that are instinctive, that have a nose for the ball. Jordan Brooks has that.
Yeah, big time speed and range too, which you have to play in that defense. It'll be interesting to compare the linebackers from this draft and how they end up doing. We talked about Kenneth Murray, Jordan Brooks. Then right after Jordan Brooks, you have Patrick Queen going to the Baltimore Ravens, who I like the best out of all three of these guys. He ends up being the third one picked. And the Ravens just have a very, very talented guy who didn't have a long track record there at LSU. Didn't start to, it wasn't even a starter heading into his last season there at LSU. But, man, he came on like gangbusters, played great in their big games, and can run and hit. I just think that Baltimore Ravens team had to address the second level of their defense, and they did it with some big-time capital here in the draft with the first-round pick and Patrick Queen. And I think, they know how to scout that position. Baltimore for a long time, and I was there, we had a little bit of a blind spot at the receiver position, couldn't get that right. They've never had problems drafting linebackers. They usually hit on those, and they found a bunch of undrafted ones that were pretty good too. But this kid, he's going to be a star. I really believe that.
Oh, he is going to be a star. And what I love about them is just how they kind of put it together. They understand exactly what they want up front. You talked about like play like a Raven and the traits that you have to have. Well, he embodies all of those traits, and I think he's going to have success. I think the next pick is interesting. The Tennessee Titans taking Isaiah Wilson. Part of the reason why it's interesting because Isaiah Wilson is someone that we had heard that people liked him in the first round, but it was hard to justify based on how we saw the tape. But the one thing that we know is he's a rogue raider. He's a guy that really lives in that maul and mash world. Well, the Tennessee Titans want to mash you up front. And so they get a guy that can move bodies off the line of scrimmage. And so if they're able to kind of run the football the way they want to run it, Isaiah Wilson won't have a problem. I think the big problem comes in pass protection. If they have an opportunity, if they're one of those teams that falls behind and he is forced to play on that island by himself, sometimes it might not look pretty, but if they can dictate the terms and run the football, he could have success there as a first-round pick.
Yeah, I think of Orlando Brown, not Orlando Brown Jr., who's with the Ravens, but his dad, Zeus. Isaiah Wilson, to me, that's kind of the career you're hoping to have out of him, which is a dominating run blocker and just hold on for dear life and pass protection. Miami, Noah Igbenogany, the corner from Auburn. That's their third first-round pick. I think when you look at Tua, where they got him, I love that. Austin Jackson is a good player, maybe a little bit early for him. Noah Igbenogany is a really tough, physical player, instinctive. He just doesn't have great ball skills, Buck. He just doesn't make a lot of plays. So to me, I thought that was a little rich for where they took him. But again, they value the toughness, and again, a great kid, like off the charts intangibles, intelligent, tough, all that stuff.
Yeah, look, son of track star parents, has a track background, straight line runner. The thing about it is he doesn't have a lot of ball skills, but the thing about the Miami Dolphins, they play so much man-to-man that ball skills aren't necessarily high on the list. This is a team that also paid big money for Byron Jones, and Byron Jones has 2 career interceptions in 77 games. I think what this is we've talked about fit and scheme. He fits how they want to play. They want to play man-to-man. They want to be nose-to-nose. Well, that's what he did in Auburn. He's not going to get a lot of interceptions, but he should get a lot of breakups because he has enough speed. It is a little early, but the player, in terms of stylistically, he fits what they want to do. Now, we will see as a nickel player if it has enough value to kind of justify why he was selected in the first round.
I like what Minnesota did with their next pick here at 31, Buck.
Man, Jeff Gladney's a good player, man. Really good football player on the island. They lose a couple of corners, Xavier Rhodes, Trey Waynes. They get Jeff Gladney, who's a tough physical player, a guy who at TCU did a really good job of just putting his hands on people, knocking them around, putting himself in positions to make tackles. He makes plays on the ball. I think he's a tough-minded player, and I think that's really why Mike Zimmer wanted him.
Yeah, he fits the bill there. I like what they're doing in Minnesota. I thought they had a great draft. Kansas City rounds it out with a player that was made to play in their system. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back out of LSU, goes to the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, all that vertical speed, they're going to be able to stretch people out, and then you're going to have the ultimate check down guy in Edwards-Helaire to do damage out of the backfield. And also somebody that is going to run in light boxes anywhere he is on the field, and he's strong. He's low to the ground. He's tough to get on the ground. Again, we put our flag in the ground on running backs on this podcast. We are not anti-drafting running backs. However, we are anti-paying them on the second contract. But we're not anti-drafting them early.
And I think it's really apparent now. I think now you can look at the Kansas City Chiefs and see kind of their long-range plan, right? So they do the draft, and then they sign Pat Mahomes after the draft. And now that Pat Mahomes is signed on that big-time deal, we've talked about the importance of being able to draft and develop the role players. Well, the most important role player for Pat Mahomes will be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And part of this is because he is going to be the guy that is the ultimate counter. If you play light boxes, you play too deep coverage, you really try and put an umbrella around the passing game, cool. We'll either hand it off to Clyde Edwards-Helaire or we'll give it to him in the screen game. And you cannot underestimate what has been said from Andy Reid and Brett Veach. They compared him to Brian Westbrook. And if you go back and look at Brian Westbrook's success in Philadelphia when he was a two-time Pro Bowl player, someone who really did it in a variety of different ways, running, touching the ball out in the passing game, Edwards-Helaire has that stuff. And we know with Eric Bieniemy being in his ear, he's going to be tough. He's going to play tough. And so I like the fit. I think this is one where, look, man, whether you liked him as a true first-round pick or not, he fits exactly what the Kansas City Chiefs do. And I can see why they valued him over some of the other guys at the position.
Yep. I think, again, it comes down to fit, and it's a perfect fit. Well, this was it, Buck. This is like the review sheet. We just gave you a review worksheet for the final here. But it was fun. It was fun to kind of go back through that draft. I needed it, to be honest with you. I don't know where you were, but I literally names would come up, and I'm like, where the heck did he go again?
Yeah, I was already on the other class. I kind of flushed all the other stuff. I put the notebook away. The notebook is in my drawer right here. I don't even know. I can't remember half of those names. I kind of flushed them out. And I got a new notebook, my notebook for the 2021 class that I'm already working on. So this was a great refresher. And we're going to have to kind of do it again when these guys go to camp and we begin to talk about them. And whether they have a preseason or not, we're going to have to refer to our notes and what the buzz is coming out of there to remember how good some of these prospects were.